conclave of Riath had once been a proud coalition of civilizations, a tapestry of worlds bound by trade, diplomacy, and mutual defense. Their homeworld, a jewel of swirling green continents and silver oceans, had been a symbol of ingenuity and resilience for centuries. But that was before the Vorath swarm arrived. Before the alien tide of living ships, psychic predators and organic titans descended upon them with the precision of a machine and the cruelty of a virus. For weeks, the Rihath had fought desperately. Orbital defenses were shredded by the swarm's writhing tendrils, which lashed through reinforced shields as if they were paper. Entire cities were incinerated in psychic shockwaves, leaving only smoldering ruins. Civilian evacuation efforts failed before they could even begin, and the fleet, though disciplined, could not match the swarm's relentless coordination. Every engagement ended with casualties too high to count and damage too severe to repair. Sia Kyle stood in the ruins of the Grand Observatory, the ancient structure a lattice of scorched steel and shattered glass. From this vantage, he could see the Vorath approaching the upper cities, their tendrils curling like living ropes, scraping against the tops of towers that had stood for millennia. Kyle's chitin trembled, not from fear alone, but from a deep, instinctive understanding of what was coming. He had spent decades studying the patterns of war, the psychology of survival, the strategies of empires, and nothing in his knowledge could prepare a species for the Vorath. They were predators beyond calculation, intelligence beyond the comprehension of even the most gifted minds in the conclave. He turned to the communications chamber, where his team worked frantically to send one final, desperate transmission across the void. They had tried every frequency, encoded every channel, pushed the limits of their most advanced transmitters. Every SOS had returned only static, every plea unanswered. They had expected the galaxy to ignore them. They had been abandoned before, and they were prepared to be abandoned again. But Kyle invoked something older, something legendary. He activated the emergency beacon, an ancient relic designed not to call allies of convenience, but the species known in myth as the Deathworlders. The legends spoke of them in hushed, reverent tones, beings forged on planets where the environment itself sought to kill them, predators who survived the impossible, warriors and scientists, explorers and protectors all rolled into one. Humans had endured gravity that could crush bone, radiation that would poison any other species, and predators that could eviscerate them with a single swipe. They had survived warlords, viruses, ecological collapse, and cosmic anomalies. And then they had risen to dominate, not through empire, but through sheer adaptability, intelligence, and relentless determination. Kyle did not expect a response. He had never known a species so isolated, so focused on survival to answer a call for help from a distant world. Yet, as the signal streamed outward, encoding every detail of the swarm's approach, the planetary devastation, and the Rihath's desperation, he felt a subtle shift in the void. At first, it was nothing more than a faint distortion, like heat shimmering across a metal surface. Sensors aboard the remaining Rihath ships flickered and recalibrated, unable to reconcile the anomaly. A ripple in space-time, almost imperceptible, moved steadily toward the system. It accelerated, bending light and scattering sensors with its sheer presence. It was massive, impossibly large, and yet elegant, moving as if the universe itself had parted to allow its passage. Even the Vorath, creatures of instinct and psychic calculation, hesitated. Their tendrils paused mid-strike. Massive titans, creatures built to crush entire cities, shrieked in confusion. They sensed the presence, but could not comprehend it. Something had arrived that was not just another predator, not just another fleet. They felt the weight of a force that belonged to the legends themselves. On the grand observatory, Kale's eyes widened. It's responding, he whispered. His voice trembled with a mixture of disbelief and awe. The human beacon had worked. Somehow, across light years and impossibly vast distances, a species renowned for surviving the deadliest worlds had received their call. Then the void shifted again. The distortion grew brighter, sharper, more defined. Sensors aboard the Rehath ship screamed in overload as the shape became recognizable, a colossal warship, angular and sleek, bristling with weaponry, its hull shimmering with an iridescent glow that made the stars themselves seem dull. Engines flared briefly, leaving streaks of unearthly light, as though the ship had ripped itself from reality itself and inserted itself into the void. The conclave watched in stunned silence. This was not a fleet. This was a single ship, a singular embodiment of the Deathworlder legend, and its presence radiated something deeper than technology, authority, discipline, inevitability. It was a predator that had arrived not for conquest, not for plunder, but because it had been called. A voice then cut through the comms, steady and unwavering, resonating across every ship, every antenna, every sensor channel. This is Captain Alethea Grayson of the United Terran Vanguard. Your SOS has been received. Identify all hostiles and remain stationary. Engagement protocols are active. Assistance is underway. Kyle fell silent. The galaxy had ignored the Rehath for weeks, but now, in an instant, the legends had become reality. Humans were here. They were no diplomats, no mercenaries, no observers. They were the Deathworlders themselves, a species that thrived where others perished, whose skill and resolve could turn the tide of entire wars. Even the remaining Vorath hesitated. Their psychic shrieks faltered, their tendrils paused, their tightened steps slowed. Something in the void had shifted, and the predator that had been feared for centuries suddenly sensed something beyond reckoning. Kyle's voice was barely audible, trembling with awe. The legends, they are real. The galaxy fell silent, not in peace, but in anticipation. The moment the Deathworlders responded, the balance of power shifted. The universe, even the Vorath, knew that survival would no longer be simple. And the Rehath, whose world had seemed doomed, finally dared to hope. From the void, the human warship moved, and with it, the galaxy itself held its breath. The human warship glided through the void with a presence that seemed almost alive. Its hull was a dark, iridescent black, segmented with angular plating that reflected distant stars in shifting, impossible patterns. Energy conduits ran across its surface like veins, pulsing faintly with power that no Rehath sensor could quantify. It rotated slowly, almost deliberately, revealing massive weapon arrays and defensive structures that suggested a vessel of unparalleled capability. From the hangars along its flanks, smaller craft deployed with fluid precision. Gunships darted outward like predators, weaving through the debris of destroyed orbital platforms. Dropships followed, releasing squads of Marines in exosuits that gleamed under the faint starlight. Weapons already primed. Fighters formed protective screens, creating a living barrier between the humans and the Vorath, moving with coordination that seemed instinctive, almost preternatural. Seer Kyle watched in stunned silence as the humans assumed control of the battlefield without a single order given to them. The Vorath, the galaxy's most feared predators, recoiled, their psychic shrieks faltering. Tendrils that had just moments before smashed through orbital stations paused mid-motion, unsure of how to respond. Titans, creatures capable of crushing entire cities, froze as if confronted by a force beyond comprehension. The human warship was more than a vessel. It was an instrument of inevitability, a force that the swarm could neither predict nor resist. Aboard the warship, Captain Alethea Grayson's voice resonated across the comms, calm, measured, and unwavering. All Rehath units remain stationary. Identify all hostiles. Engagement protocols are active. Terran deployment units are entering the battlefield. Stand clear of enemy forces. The Cathari, or in this case, the Rehath, could feel the difference immediately. The human ship's presence radiated authority, dominance, and lethal precision. Even as the Vorath began to recover from their initial hesitation, human gunships had already intercepted swarms of smaller enemy vessels, blasting through organic hulls with rail cannons and plasma lances that tore corridors through the swarm's lines. Dropships descended with mechanical grace, Marines disembarking in perfect formation. Each movement was deliberate, precise, and terrifyingly effective. Titans of the Vorath, some hundreds of meters tall, met the humans head-on and fell in moments. Their psychic attacks were countered not with shields alone, but with preemptive, surgical strikes that neutralized threats before they could fully manifest. Seer Kyle's voice trembled as he whispered to his aides, They are gods of war. But they fight for us, not against us. Varric, the Rehath military commander, who had observed human legends with skepticism for decades, could only nod slowly. No, he murmured, claws tightening. They are humans, Deathworlders. The legends are true. They survive where nothing else does, and they fight to protect. The Vorath, sensing the shift in the battlefield, hesitated. Ships that had been charging with unrelenting malice now twisted in hesitation, unsure how to engage a force that operated on a level beyond their understanding. Their psychic signals faltered. Their movements became fragmented. The presence of the humans, their precision, their indomitable will, had broken the rhythm of the predator that had devoured countless worlds. From the void, the human warship watched, waited, and directed the battle without a single wasted movement. Gunships darted, Marines deployed, and the horizon breaker itself moved as if the entire system were a chessboard. In that moment, the Rehath and all who witnessed it understood a fundamental truth. When Deathworlders responded, the galaxy itself held its breath. And from that silence, the first volleys of destruction began. The Vorath would learn, in ways they could not imagine, what it meant to face a species that thrived on worlds where survival was the only law, a species that answered a call not with hesitation, but with absolute certainty. The void had changed, the rules had changed, and the humans had risen from it like legends made flesh. The Vorath swarm, massive and merciless, surged forward in a wave of living ships. Tendrils lanced through the void, snapping at the orbital defenses of Rehath, while smaller vessels swarmed with instinctive coordination, overwhelming sensors, and tearing apart the planetary shield. Massive biotitans, each hundreds of meters tall and capable of crushing cities with a single strike, stomped across orbital debris, their psychic screams reverberating through space. For a moment, it seemed as though nothing could stop them. But the humans did not flinch. Gunships, erupted from the horizon breaker like swarms of steel-hardened predators. They weaved between tendrils and energy blasts, each movement perfectly synchronized with their counterparts. Rail cannons fired in unison, carving deadly arcs through the organic hulls of the Vorath vessels. Plasma lances flared, incinerating clusters of the swarm before they could strike. Dropships descended toward the planet's surface in carefully calculated arcs. Marines braced for impact. Their exosuits shimmered with reinforced energy shielding, weapons humming with concentrated energy. They did not hesitate. They moved as if the battlefield were an extension of their instincts, anticipating every strike, every movement, every fatal misstep the Vorath might make. One bio-titan, massive beyond comprehension, surged toward a partially evacuated city. Its limbs smashed through debris and remaining defenses with terrifying ease. A single human marine stepped forward, her weapon raised and calibrated, targeting the creature's joints and psychic nodes. The Titan roared, psychic fury lashing outward, but the marine did not flinch. Her weapon discharged, slicing through sinew and armored plating alike. The Titan faltered, stumbled, and fell in a deafening crash that shook the remaining debris in orbit. Another Titan advanced. Another marine met it head-on. Another Titan fell. The Vorath realized, too late, that the humans were not defenders, they were hunters. They did not wait for openings, they created them. They did not react, they anticipated. Every action was deliberate, lethal, and executed with the precision of a species tempered by worlds that could kill in an instant. Seer Kyle's eyes widened as he whispered, "The legends, they are real." Above the battlefield, the horizon breaker rotated smoothly, scanning the entire system. Its sensors traced every Vorath vessel, every titanic limb, every psychic signature. It calculated angles, predicted trajectories, and deployed strike units accordingly. Gunships darted to intercept swarms of smaller enemy vessels. Marines neutralized Titans with pinpoint accuracy, and dropships repositioned dynamically, creating overlapping layers of lethal defense. The Rehath fleet, battered and near despair, could only watch in awe. The humans did not merely fight, they dominated the battlefield. Every strike, every movement, every deployment radiated a mastery of warfare that was both terrifying and beautiful. The Vorath faltered, confused and unprepared for an enemy whose actions transcended conventional strategy. Even the psychic feedback that usually guided their assaults could not match the calculated precision of the Deathworlders. For the first time in millennia, the swarm encountered a force that could anticipate their every move and counter it before it could be executed. And so, the first strike ended, not with a victory cry, but with quiet, absolute authority. The humans had arrived. They had engaged, and they had already begun to redefine the rules of survival. The galaxy, even in the distant sectors monitoring the battle, began to take note when humans intervened. Nothing, not Titans, not swarms, not the void itself, remained the same. The void around Rehath ignited with unrelenting fury. The Vorath swarm, confident in their overwhelming numbers, surged forward in waves of living ships and bio-titans, each one a manifestation of the galaxy's most feared predator. Tendrils lashed at orbital stations, shredding reinforcements, while smaller vessels twisted through the debris, attempting to flank the human warship. The psychic screams of the Vorath echoed across space, rattling the hulls of Rehath vessels and sending shivers through those who heard them. But the humans did not falter. Gunships darted outward in a symphony of lethal motion. Rail cannons fired in precise arcs, cutting down clusters of Vorath vessels before they could form attack vectors. Plasma lances flared with surgical precision, vaporizing organic hulls mid-flight. Dropships released squads of Marines in perfect formation, exosuits bristling with energy shielding and weapons that discharged in deadly synchronization. Every movement was calculated, every strike deliberate, every reaction preemptive. The battlefield was no longer chaotic. It was a machine honed to a single purpose: survival and annihilation of the threat. A massive Vorath Titan surged toward a partially intact city, its psychic screams lashing out in waves that shook the remaining Rehath fleet. One Marine stepped forward alone, targeting the creature's neural nodes and weak points in its armor. Her weapon discharged in a single, controlled volley. The Titan's limbs faltered, its psychic output stuttering, and it crashed to the ground with a thundering impact that scattered smaller vessels in its vicinity. Another Titan advanced. Another Marine met it. Another Titan fell. The horizon breaker rotated smoothly, scanning the battlefield with sensors that seemed to see into the very movements of the enemy. Its main cannon charged, energy building in a hum that resonated across the void. "Target primary cluster," Captain Grayson ordered. A single discharge erupted, vaporizing half the swarm fleet instantly. Shockwaves tore through debris, scattering smaller ships and reducing the organic hulls of Vorath vessels to nothing but ash. Gunships continued their dance. Marines swept through debris fields, and remaining Titans were hunted methodically. Not a single human ship fell. Not a single Marine faltered. 14 minutes, 840 seconds of unrelenting surgical combat, and the Vorath swarm was shattered. The Rehath fleet, battered, terrified, and exhausted, could do nothing but witness the raw, terrifying skill of the Deathworlders. They had expected little. They had expected no aid. And now they understood the truth. These humans did not merely survive death, they wielded it, mastered it, and turned it against those who threatened life itself. Sir Kyle whispered to his aides, voice trembling, "We expected nothing, and they came." Grayson's calm, precise voice carried across the comms, "We respond to calls for aid. We survive where others cannot. We fight to protect. Remember that." The Vorath had learned, in a single battle, the scale of human mastery. The galaxy itself seemed to pause. Even distant civilizations, observing the battle through sensors and relays, felt the weight of what they were witnessing. Humans had arrived, and their presence alone redefined the rules of war and survival. 14 minutes, a fraction of time, and yet enough to shatter legends, forge new ones, and leave the galaxy in awe and fear. The void fell silent. The Rehath world, though scarred, had survived. And for the first time in countless millennia, they realized that when Deathworlders responded, nothing, not Titans, not swarms, not the universe itself, could stand unafraid. After the last Vorath ship retreated into the dark, battered void, silence settled across the Rehath system. Not the quiet of peace, but a trembling, awed quiet, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. Smoke rose in slow, curling ribbons from burning cities. Twisted debris drifted lazily through orbit. The swarm was broken, scattered, and the Titans lay fallen like monuments to human precision. The Rehath could only stare, trembling, at the aftermath. The horizon breaker hovered above the planet, its engines idling, weapons still primed, a silent sentinel that radiated authority. Its angular hull shimmered with iridescence, reflecting the shattered remnants of the swarm in cold, calculating light. The hangars retracted, gunships and fighters returned to formation, and Marines climbed back aboard their dropships. Every movement was deliberate, fluid, and filled with quiet dominance. This was not celebration, it was a statement. Seer Kyle turned to his fellow council members, eyes wide. We invoked legends, and they answered. The Deathworlders, they are real. We have witnessed them. Commander Varric, claws tightening, nodded slowly. They are not gods, nor conquerors. They are humans, Deathworlders, survivors of worlds that would kill anyone else. They fight not for glory or conquest, but to protect life where others fail. The galaxy, even in distant sectors, had felt the tremor. Communications relays across light years picked up the transmissions, the energy signatures, and the tactical precision of the human assault. Systems that had once ignored pleas for aid paused. Star councils faltered. Mercenary fleets froze mid-maneuver. Entire civilizations whispered in hushed, fearful tones. The Deathworlders had arrived, and when they did, the universe remembered. Captain Grayson's voice cut through the comms one final time, calm and precise. We act when called. We fight when needed. The universe will remember today, not for glory, but because some species cannot be ignored. Then, as silently as they had arrived, the humans withdrew. The horizon breaker slipped into the void, moving with a grace and authority that left observers in awe. Gunships and fighters followed, leaving only streaks of starlight in the memory of their presence. The Rehath, their cities scarred but alive, knew they had been saved not by chance, not by diplomacy, but by a species forged in the harshest crucibles imaginable. The galaxy fell silent, in another sense this time, with deep, instinctive fear. Wherever sensors and observers could see, systems paused, fleets hesitated, and civilizations understood a truth that would echo for generations. Humans, the Deathworlders, were unstoppable when they chose to intervene. Their skill, precision, and indomitable will could shatter titans, scatter swarms, and alter the balance of entire sectors in moments. And so, in the quiet that followed, the legends were confirmed. When Deathworlders responded to a call for aid, the galaxy did not cheer. It did not rejoice. It fell silent, not in peace, but in fear, awe, and recognition. The universe had witnessed something eternal, the terrifying, unyielding, protective power of humanity. For the Rehath, for the survivors, and for every species listening across the void, the lesson was clear: when humans respond, survival is no longer a gamble. And no one, no swarm, no tyrant, no void itself would ever face them unafraid. The galaxy would remember, the galaxy would tremble, and the Deathworlders would continue to answer calls from the darkness, reshaping existence wherever they stepped.